So we are now joined by one of the actors who is in The High Note with Dakota Johnson and Tracy Ellis Ross, and he is also in the Apple TV Plus show Central Park, which has a new episode coming out tomorrow. Comes out every Friday. But he is also the star of Tacoma FD, which comes back July 23rd. It is Eugene Cordero. Super stoked to have you, man. How are you?
I'm good. I mean, all things considered, I think that's a thing that, is being said right now is considering everything that's going on.
Considering everything
I'm trying to be I'm trying to be as positive as I can be, and and it's working out okay. So that helps.
Mostly if you just tread water now, you're doing great.
Yeah, you're doing a lot better than most people right now.
Right. Yeah. And even like the wording of things, which I totally understand, but like the idea of not calling this a crazy time right now is just good, because it's like, it's true. It's like it's a transitional time and a bunch of things are happening. So it's like, I don't know if it's crazy. It's just different and changing.
It can be crazy, but like overarching, it's definitely just been like, this is going to be our new norm. I hate that word. I hate new normal. Right?
Same.
But it's like, it's just a different environment. It's going to be a different way of like doing everything in our lives. So,
but I think like labeling it as a transitional time is such a great way of like talking, instead of just saying like, oh, it's a crazy time, like everything is insane. It's like just saying like things are going through transition, we're learning things right now,
and in all honesty, it's like it will be better than it was before all of this.
We need a hell lot more change,
Yeah,
a lot more transition.
Even the way that people like wash their hands in the bathroom now is better,
Yeah.
Like we could really get mad at that dude who leaves the bathroom without washing his hands. And you know how, like, I mean, I don't know when the last time you were at a restaurant was. I mean, it's impossible to know any of that stuff. And if you say it's recent, then people are going to get mad. And if you say it hasn't been a while, like whatever. But now that the bathrooms kind of have just the stalls and then everybody shares the sinks, you know how like there's like like various things. It's like now you can totally be shamed if you just go straight from the toilet and just leave that sink area.
So one of the first restaurants I went to was Raw Sushi here in Dallas. And I come out of the stall and there's a dude at the sink and it's like a 2-sink setup, right? And I'm like, okay, if I walk up to him, I'm gonna be like within 2 feet of him.
Yeah.
So I'm just standing there awkwardly by the urinal, waiting for this dude to like wash his hands and dry, and, like get out of there before I can like it's super weird, but
it definitely should not have taken a pandemic for people to be like, I should probably wash my hands regularly. But now it's like when you walk out of the bathroom, it's like, okay, I have to wash my hands.
Let's be real. It's only 50% of the population, right?
True.
It's just all the guys that wash their hands.
One person who's learned those is a good step forward, I guess. But
sure.
Yeah.
So not a majority of society.
Enough about hand washing.
Yeah. Let's let's actually no. There's something I wanted to start off with, and it's a little bit old.
Not much.
It's 8 years old.
Oh, never mind.
Yeah, 8 years. Okay, let's do it.
You did a TED Talk 8 years ago.
Yeah, fake TED Talk. Well, I mean, a real TED Talk.
Yes.
A real TED Talk, but a fake TED Talk. Real TED Talk. Yeah.
Nobody in the audience, except for the people with the umbrellas, knew it was fake. So what was that whole experience like?
That was a thing called Improv Everywhere. This improviser from the Upright Citizens Brigade in New York, his name is Charlie Todd. He actually also created this Disney Plus series, or is involved with, or created. I can't remember the details, but it's great. But it led to it's called Pixar in Real Life. That's on that's on Disney Plus, where he basically recreates a bunch of things that happened in Pixar movies, and and does the same thing as the Improv Everywhere thing, where it's like, a little Wally is walking around in New York and people are interacting with this Wally.
Super cool.
So it's really cool if you want to check that out. That's a shameless plug to a buddy of mine. But Charlie Todd created this thing, and he was hired by the TED Talks people to do a fake TED Talk. And because we had done a bunch of things together, he asked me if I would do it, be Colin Robertson or whatever. And it was one of those things where it was like a prank show, but in the sense of nobody else was in on it around me, and I didn't have one of those earpieces, and it was just kind of like, okay, the whole day I had to do all of this research where I knew what I was going to talk about.
Mm-hmm.
So that when I was in the kind of green room with all of the other speakers, I could, they were like, "Oh, what's your talk going to be?" I was like, "Oh, this and this," and they were like, "Oh, we're excited for that."
The other talkers had no clue. Like they
No
thought
idea.
you were just like some dude who knew solar energy.
Yes. No, I was just talking about like a new way of handling solar energy.
So you're just acting like a Silicon Valley exec for a day, basically.
Yeah, I was basically like, my it's kind of hard to explain. And basically what I was always saying to everybody was like, it's hard to explain without the PowerPoint presentation, because I kind of need it so that people can gauge, the different focus and angle we're going with. But basically it's this. And then I would just kind of have like this little paragraph that I've memorized to kind of, and they were like, "Oh, that's interesting." I'm like, but the graphics are great. We really worked hard on them. So I was, even with the other speakers, I was kind of pushing the fact that it was so important that my tech worked for it.
Oh,
so then that's why when that pinwheel of death happens, I seem so stressed.
You're like, "Oh, shit."
I can look at, and there were moments where I looked down at the people that I had talked to, and they were like, I don't know what you could do. And I'm like, I don't know what I can do either.
You did it so great, because like he sent it to me and I didn't even realize it was you at first. And you're clearly uncomfortable when like the wheel of death comes up. But as soon as people like start coming on the stage, you look like,
what the hell is
going on? You look
like
death.
Yeah.
Well, that's like when I pulled the video for the first, because I was looking up your improv and your stand-up, and I saw this video and I was like, what the hell? So I clicked on it, it comes up and it says Colin Robertson, and I was like, wait, I thought his name was Eugene Cordero. I was like, oh, wait a second, he's playing a character here. Okay.
Yeah.
And like dove into it. I was like, oh, this is hilarious. I would have loved to have seen I would have loved to have like been in on it and seen everybody's reaction in those moments of just like, oh, holy shit, he's like, this is the worst moment.
I mean, it was the worst moment for those people. Like, if that was your first time that you'd be able to do that, it would be heartbreaking, I think,
And it's funny because it happens to Steve Jobs, and it's happened to like Elon Musk. It is definitely happened in like very serious presentation.
Sure. Yeah.
Maybe not with people in morph suits, but
no, not like that. But just the whole thing.
No, it sounds like such a cool experience.
So can we ask you about Mandalorian? Like,
yes,
we saw
sure.
a little clip about how they did the production with the virtual LED stage.
Mm-hmm.
Is that something in the scenes that you did? Was that done on that stage?
Yeah.
Okay. What was that like?
So, I mean, it's basically like you know when you go to like a museum and they have like that dome where it's like all of the stars and everything.
Yeah.
So you imagine
Land.
Yeah. If you imagine that, but it was like, it's like if somebody bought out a Best Buy and then like just lined the whole thing with all of their best TVs around you. And when you walked into it, they were able to set it up where it looked like you were in a real place. That's what if I stood in the middle of that stage and I looked around quickly, it looked like I was there.
That is insane.
And then if you get closer, so you see where the screen is of me now.
Mm-hmm.
Everything behind me would be super high def, so it would look as real as it actually is.
Yeah.
But then a little bit past my hands would be still high definition, but a little bit more pixelated, so it's not as high definition. It would be as high definition as your television past that, but right behind me would be so high def that it looks like it's literally there. Yeah.
Yeah. It looks like from the Disney Plus documentary and like the other stuff they did, like if you had just hadn't walked through like the production facility and just like ended up somehow on that stage with like not seeing anything, you would just feel like you're in the world. Like it looks exactly like just being in an open environment.
Yeah, I mean that was it for a lot of the villager scenes and stuff like that we did. But it wasn't the big battle was obviously outside with like green screens and everything set up. With like the ATST battle, big fight at the end. That stuff was all outside, and but anything that were in the huts or when me and Asif, the other actor that I was with in that scene, approached the Mandalorian, that's all within that thing. Like that, his ship was there, which was totally cool, and you could walk into it.
Insane. You could wait. You could. Did you walk into it?
Yeah. You walked into it, and then and I mean there was a whole half a day where they had to run, the child's mechanics through my arm so that I could pick them up and put them into the, into our ship or our thing. So it was a lot, but it was totally the coolest thing in the world. So.
Who was directing? Was that Dallas Bryce Howard's episode?
Yeah.
What was it like working with like an actor who had kind of made that switch into directing?
She definitely was so focused on the actor and the feelings and the emotion of characters. So that I appreciate, because she comes from the same, she's coming from the same language that we're from. So, that helps. And then that way it's like, I love being able to work with a bunch of different directors, and some are more technical than others that are like, really focused on, okay, this and this, but sometimes that can get kind of overwhelming because you're thinking of what you're going to do, and somebody's like, okay, so this shot is this, and then we're going to pull in. And it's like, you know what?
Yeah, I don't need to know that.
I don't need to know that. Yeah. So the way that she worked was very much not talking about the shot setup and more about, and especially in that world, you also, I mean, and this is me personally, I also know that in that show, I loved being a part of it. And, I had to sign so many things just so that I couldn't say what was, or the fact that the baby Yoda.
Oh, we're talking the child here in a minute.
Yeah. We had to be quiet. Yeah. And if you saw our episode, there's a bunch of children there.
Yes.
So I'm like, how were they able to shut them up? But they were able to
sequestered them for like months.
Right. But if they're not saying anything, I would be the asshole if I was the one. You know what I mean? So I was like so overly quiet about it.
Did you talk? Did you say anything to like your wife or anything about it? You just had to like, you just internally were like, I'm just going to keep this in.
I mean, I'll be honest, my wife didn't care. My wife doesn't care about Star Wars stuff at all. So it wasn't like it would have been that exciting to her. But it was hard for me to not tell some of my friends who are huge Star Wars fans. My buddy, he was on SNL for a while, Bobby Moynihan.
Oh,
he is probably the biggest Star Wars fan I know. And to keep it from him was...
How pissed was he at you for when he found out about the child?
He was excited. He was happy that I didn't tell him. And he is involved in the universe already, so he might have known before that. But like, it was neat.
You guys got lucky. You snuck in the premiere and everything. Like what, a couple months before the world grinded to a halt.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
But when you had that scene with the child that you were talking about, the wires, and when you saw that I guess it's a puppet, did you know how big of a, like, I don't think anybody knew how big of a phenomenon it was, but
no, but the fact that nobody had been dealing with that species or who that was, and to be honest, I wasn't sure if it was actually Yoda, if it was one of, like I didn't, because I only got the script they didn't give me the series,
they only gave you,
like they gave me mine, and they, and this whole, and I got my sides.
Mm-hmm.
But the whole script I had to leave in the room every night and sign out and blah, blah, blah. Like there was no way that I would get. So, the limited information I had, I was excited about, but I also think there was a separate waiver right before we came on set with the child that was like, okay, all of the waivers aside where you can't talk about anything, I think you might need to sign this one more thing about this.
This one specific thing.
Yeah, Favreau was like militant about it. He wouldn't like toys or anything.
That's like super famous now.
Yeah. Which is I mean, it was a huge reveal, and it I did not know how big it was, but it felt pretty big that was going to be something that was going to be in this series. So, I mean, and then watching the series, that's what the whole series is about, is protecting the child. So, that's a huge plot point, I think.
Makes a lot of sense. But you're also in a show called Central Park on Apple TV Plus. They have episodes coming out every Friday. There's a new one coming out tomorrow. It was created by the guy who created Bob's Burgers, but also
Lauren,
Josh Gad. And that cast is stacked. Like,
it's amazing. Yeah.
What is it like working with a Stanley Tucci who's playing a woman, and Catherine Hahn and David Diggs and
right? It's amazing. I mean, I will say that I feel very lucky to be part of that. And the way that it happened was pretty cool and great. And it was I had just gotten a gig on Bob's Burgers to be a voice on it, and was doing the table read for that, and Lauren and a bunch of the writers for Bob's, and there is kind of a crossover of the Bob's Burgers and the Central Park people, and they popped the idea in their head that maybe this guy would be great as
Kite Man.
As Kite Man, as Brandon in this. And they had thrown it by and asked me to read for it, and I couldn't have been more excited. And then, I read for it, and they felt like it was a good fit. And then I saw who the rest of the cast was, and I was like, this is crazy.
Yeah. Nuts.
And Kristen and I have done a bunch of stuff on The Good Place, obviously together, and also House of Lies back in 2012 or 2014 or something like that. So we have a little bit of a history of working together. So it was nice to work with her again, and she's amazing. And when we did the table read for the first episode, and having a bunch of people there, and then a bunch of people that you could hear from New York do their part, it was exciting.
So cool.
Yeah.
So and when you did like your table read or your read through for the first time, did you have an idea if it was going to be a musical? Was that something that like they kind of told you?
Yeah, I had to. They also had me audition with a song and make sure that I could sing. I think in episode 6 or 7, you'll actually hear me sing.
Nice. So look out for that.
Nice.
But that was like I started watching it, and I was like, okay, when you see kind of like who's in it with the two guys from Hamilton, Leslie Odom Jr. and David Diggs, it's like, and Josh Gad, obviously, it's like, okay, makes sense that they would do music.
Yeah.
And it's
and
really
Kristen,
good. Kristen, and so it's like, it's so interesting of a show. It's really pretty funny. And then you've got, on top of all that, you've got Stanley Tucci playing Bitsy. And I was like, wait a second. Man. That's supposed to, that is Tucci. Okay. Like, it's such an interesting show, and it's really funny. Like, it's just been a really fun show to do.
Yeah, it's been great. Yeah. I mean, Lauren, in the way that he does Bob's Burgers already, is just so focused and funny, and everybody that he pulled in, and the producers and the showrunners of this show are just awesome. That it just really felt fun and loose and bright, like it doesn't feel too intense, and the comedy is in there through like the relationships, and it's just it's neat to see. And people get to play parts, especially right now, people are going to play parts that because it's animated is
Yes.
fun and outside of their comfort zone. So
Well, you've done like a real mix of animated and live action TV
yeah.
and movies. Is there one you prefer the most, or is it there's stuff that you really enjoy about both?
I mean, I enjoy the voiceover stuff because when you grow up on cartoons and you grow
Yeah.
up on animation, so as a kid you're like, oh man, it would be awesome to be a voice on this or that, and to see what you can do with animation that you can't do in real life is
Mhm.
amazing. um but yeah, I feel like I'm an actor first, so
Okay.
I like being in front of the camera more than just being a voice of something. But I totally enjoy those gigs as well.
Well, you're in front of the camera a lot on True TV's Tacoma FD and
Yeah,
with the
yeah.
dudes from Super Troopers. So anytime I see those two guys' faces, I'm like, oh hell yeah, let's go.
Oh
But
man, they're great.
what was it like? What was the process of getting involved with that?
Man, they're just very hands-on with everything. The two of them, Kevin and Steve, uh, Steve Lemmy, Kevin Heffernan, they have their voice and they're writing partners, outside of this. So they have a shared voice that is very specific. I mean, it
Yes.
does play within the Broken Lizard Super Troopers thing, but they also have a unique voice as just what their comedy is together and what their comedy is separate. And, it's if you watch them on screen in the first season and the first part of this season, and you watch their interactions, I mean, it's like you either turn the camera on or turn the camera off,
Oh yeah.
because it's literally almost the same thing in the way that they fight, in the way that they joke around with each other, in the way that they play off of each other. It's like it's really solid and really it seems to flow and be really easy for those guys. So it's nice, and they uh they have a lot of input on what happens on the show and what is moving forward with the show. So in the casting process, the parts, and I mean, in today's society, of course it's changing even more, but it was written as you know Andy Parrish or something like that, where they were looking for a specific type, and I'm just not that. And Wendy O'Brien, who's one of my favorite casting people in the world, is always a champion for why don't you just see
Yeah. Who this
this
guy is?
instead. And Kevin and Steve are like, I don't know if we need to follow what we had written for the pilot to get the pilot sold so much as just finding the funniest people that we think that we could work with,
Yes.
hopefully for the next 800 years.
Yeah.
That's the goal, right?
Yeah, that's the goal. The goal is like, who's the best for the part, but who's going to be the best coworkers?
Yes.
Like we're trying to get longevity out of this and not trying to just make a splash at the beginning and then hope that's the difference, I think, especially when it comes from television to film. It's like for a film, it's like, let's try to do our best to just focus on this one moment, make this idea happen, and then see what else is out. You don't make a movie hoping that you'll make a sequel.
Yeah. No.
You're making a movie to hopefully make a splash with that movie. And I think there's a bunch of TV shows that came out, and I think that's also part of what Hollywood is or was for a while, and that's what people wanted, especially when all of the streaming services came out. It's like, how do you make a splash in that first episode? How do you make a Lost, where the first episode everybody talks about, and then you hold on to it somewhat? You know what I mean?
Because literally, yeah, like you always, it doesn't matter what show it is, the ratings are gonna go down a little bit. You could be the best show ever,
unless you're like Stranger Things or one of
they don't
the
put those out.
phenomenals, right?
Yeah. So, but even then, like that's another template that they were doing. How do you get the arc of the season so that you can release all of them at once?
Yes.
So then that it does kind of become like, how do we sell this season? Hopefully we'll get a next season off of this. And I think with Kevin and Steve, they went with more of the traditional, like, how do we make a show that's going to just last 800 years.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, that has to be really, really stressful to basically go into each new season like, okay, we have to do something that's going to get us another season. Like your entire season is basically like survivor mode. Whereas like that show, Tacoma FD, is, you can really tell that all those people are there together, just having a great time playing off each other almost.
Yeah, and there's there is something for both. I enjoy watching both. I enjoy being part of both. I mean, there's some aspects to Tacoma that where the focus is on it being an evergreen episode, meaning that like you can just click on episode 6 of season 8, and then you can just watch it and you get it.
Yeah, it's contained in and of itself.
Which is great, and it's its own thing. But then there's moments in that show that we were like, oh man, I wish we could make it a little bit more of a episodic thing where it goes, there's a through line that you have to watch the other ones. And that's what, ultimately what old sitcoms were like. Oh, what are they talking about? Well, that detail you have to watch, episode of 1. Where like The Good Place, on the other hand, it's like, well, you can't even get into season. You can't get into a later season if you haven't watched it.
It's interesting because like a lot of shows nowadays are kind of doing that, where you'll have almost cult following shows like Brooklyn Nine-Nine or whatnot that really truly have self-contained episodes, all the way through. And now you have even like American Horror Story or The Detour, not The Detour. What was it? The Cabin. The one
yeah.
So you have different ones where each episode is like a completely different story.
Sure.
I think The Cabin was TBS.
Yeah, it was TBS, but it was like every single episode was a new.
So funny,
it's fucking hysterical.
God,
like anthology style comedies. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah, it's a great way to do it because like
Miracle Workers, which is also TBS, does that. They do like that anthology type of thing.
Because that way you do have a draw every single season. To bring people in, but it definitely works each way,
and it's
and that's creative in its own way of like trying to come up with another way of staying trying to something new, basically having a brand new show every season.
That's so much. That has to be fun for y'all. Like you're getting to do something different. Like it never becomes stale, I would think. Like
right, but then there is something, I mean, being on a show like this where it's not going to necessarily change, it's going to have its own challenges of 800 years from now us still playing these parts,
and shit. Like,
well, it still works though, because in that kind of show you always just bring in new characters, right? Like you got the rookie in the the firehouse or whatever. So
sure,
and then you got the police department, which Jimmy Tatro plays one of the cops.
He does,
and he's actually a firefighter in King of Staten Island. Have you checked that out yet?
I haven't checked that out yet, but when we were on set, he showed us a picture that he was also a firefighter. We're like, yeah, we get it. You do it all.
You're everywhere, man. Like, no, it's a super funny movie. So.
It's a great movie.
Yeah.
If you're into the Judd Apatow kind
of stuff. Yeah, of course.
But we had you on to talk about The High Note, and we talked about a lot of other stuff.
Oh yeah.
The High Note with Dakota Johnson and Tracy Ellis Ross. It's been playing in a couple theaters here in the Dallas area.
Oh, good, in theaters.
Yes, and I think one, but that's more than I think.
Well,
sure, anything.
Texas is kind of like
just give a fuck,
blowing the door open, and like just do whatever the hell you want.
Yeah,
so
sure.
But the theaters are like super slow about opening up. So we only have like I think 5 or 6 open at the moment. Out of probably 50 different theaters in the area. So,
but I mean, what was it like, making that movie and then kind of seeing it, go through everything that it went through in March with its release date, and just what was that experience like?
I mean, it's similar to everything else that's happening in the industry right now. It's just like trying to find its place and, trying to get a wider release so that people can see it or find ways for people to see it. I mean, I feel like people are going to find it. And then after, people are back to able to go back to theaters or paying more attention to what they can stream online,
Yeah.
it's gonna be one of those movies that you'll have on. Like it's a I think it just has like a very, very solid like premise, and everybody that's in it is so great.
Yeah, it's
that
a great cast too.
that it just it's like a feel good movie. And also the songs, speaking of music again.
Yeah, you really like music, I guess.
Yeah, the music in it I think is so like, I couldn't get those songs out of my head when we were shooting.
Really?
Yeah, because I play like the music producer, so we're sitting in the booth, and we had a lot of scenes where we're sitting there listening to the songs.
That's cool.
And those are going to be, obviously got edited out, because it's like us just sitting there bobbing our heads is not necessarily going to make the movie, but
make the cut.
But the montages of those moments were going to happen. But we were sitting there and listening to them, and I was just like, I'd come home from set all the time and just be singing these songs.
They didn't have to sign you an NDA to not sing the songs outside.
Well, I would just be humming them.
Yeah.
I'm not belting the Tracy Ellis Ross jams.
Yeah.
Through Whole Foods or something.
Yeah.
But Ice Cube is in it too. What was it like working with Ice Cube?
He was great. I mean, I most of my stuff was with Dakota.
Mm-hmm.
So I didn't get to work with him all that much, but there was those scenes where we're in the production, in the studio, and it's Diplo and Ice Cube and everybody was awesome. I mean, it was just one of those things where it was. So I was playing the producer, and they had an on-site producer there to kind of show me what I was doing, so that I didn't look like an asshole, which I appreciate so much.
That helps a lot.
And I'll be honest, I was dressed exactly like him. Like it was like he might have, and he was telling me exactly how he would listen to something, how he would, so that was happening. So I already felt out of my element, because there was a professional there, and we were at Capitol Records, so it was on a real board that they had made awesome records on. And we went to another studio where they had made, they had made a bunch of these huge Hollywood records, yeah. So that was already intimidating. That producer alone was intimidating. And then you have Ice Cube and Diplo and these guys who this is their element.
Yeah.
I'm just like, I just quietly hung out, You're
just absorbing all this information right now.
Yeah. And, knowing that I was there, as a supporting role, and I didn't, and knowing where I was in the movie, I was very much just like, oh, this is a learning experience to just kind of be in the world of the music industry. So I was just taking it in across the board, Also, everything smells. You can't get the weed out of the walls, I don't think.
I mean, boy,
I would have just been there for that alone. That would have been hilarious.
Some of those rooms have probably been like 30, 40 years plus of just nothing.
Oh, yeah. Everybody. Yeah.
Could you imagine just walking in and be like, yep, that's definitely weed?
Oh, man. You walk in and you're just like,
rooms.
Oh, this is definitely a music studio.
Yeah.
Like that has been used to make some amazing music.
If those walls could talk, the stories would be.
I mean, they'd be dead.
Yeah,
those would be dead walls. Those walls are dead.
Well, man, you got any future projects that are coming up that you want to plug, or what you going to be doing in the future?
We just have more Central Park episodes coming out. The second half of Tacoma FD starts in July, which the second half of this season is even crazier than the first half. They're letting us do so much more, and it was a blast. Hopefully we'll hear soon if we get a third season, and hopefully we'll start production on something soon.
Yep.
There's a couple other things in the works that aren't like officially released or anything yet. So I'm not necessarily. But there are some things in the pipeline that are exciting and in there. And then there's also Lower Decks, Star Trek. I'm a voice.
I saw that.
Speaking of voices, that comes out at the end of this summer, I believe. CBS All Access, and that's that
Oh wow.
is awesome. And
Cool.
Tawny Newsome is in it, Noel Wells, and Jack Quaid.
So we got to ask, Star Trek or Star Wars, which one's better?
You know what? I was kind of like an outside fan of both.
Yeah.
You know, I wasn't a huge space kid.
Space
growing up.
guy. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Like when people ask me, like, to look at constellations, I'm like, they all just it's
all the same.
It all
bright light.
it feels the same.
Yeah.
I'm sure there's an extraterrestrial out there pissed at me right now because they can hear what I'm saying, and
Yeah, we'll beam this
whatever.
up to them.
They don't care.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but this is not their problem right now. But I appreciated both growing up, and I appreciate both more now that I am involved and I get excited. So, I don't know. I would love to do more of both. Just because they're so different, and it's all work.
There's gonna be a ton out there.
Yeah, for Star Wars, I think there's a way to go back to that village. So
Sure.
Yeah.
I would love to see that. But
yeah, I'd really like to ask you. You've had like just a really diverse and really solid career so far. For any comedians or musicians or aspiring actors like trying to get started in this environment, what would you have any advice for people on what can they do in such a limited environment as this to stand out and to get noticed?
I think I mean it's so hard. It's such a hard career, and it's such a hard I don't know, like everybody's path is different. But I ultimately my best advice for this, and even when this is done, is to like stay on top of your own stuff, meaning educate yourself on the work that's out there, educate yourself on your own work, and be prepared for the moment. Like people believe, and I can't fault them for it, and I agree that like it's a luck game.
Yep.
For the moment. And it's like people talk about like, oh, when do you get your shot? And it's like your shot is anytime you do anything.
Yeah.
So make sure that every time you do something, you're doing it at the best of your ability, because that's going to bring the next thing forward. And I think a lot of the time people are like, oh, I got offered this, but that's nothing. And it's like, no, that's something. That's another opportunity for you to learn. That's another opportunity for you to work with other people and educate yourself on how to do something. So there's never a step backwards. There's only step forwards. So like use everything as an education move for yourself. And that's, because you never know that the person who is, like a productionist, like a PA on something, is going to has a script, and that script is going to be found, and they'll direct the next biggest, sci-fi thing out there, or the next comedy that, like people are listening to that voice. Like you never know. So if you are doing your 100% on that project, and that PA is going like, man, that motherfucker is funny, easy to work with. If I ever make anything, I'm going to do this. Or they're going to watch that and go like, I'm going to actually write a character that's kind of based on him because this is fun. And then that opportunity happens, you get that call, and then you're part of the process. I think that's a lot of it, is like taking every opportunity as your luck opportunity is,
Yeah, it's such kind of like a unusual career, because all your opportunities are basically the result of someone else, extending it towards you. So you just 100% have to be completely prepared and always working diligently to be ready for those opportunities.
Yeah, and then be able to control what you're doing on that day. Like, that opportunity is going to happen, And then when that happens, it's like, well, how do you take advantage of it? You know, like there's been countless opportunities where I've shit the bed too, but that's just for whatever reason been a learning experience. But you know, like that also happens and you learn from it.
Mhm.
Oh, did that happen because I wasn't prepared enough for the day? Oh, did that happen because I was, you know, whatever the reason is, then you like use that as, you know, not anybody else's fault, but that was an opportunity for me to succeed. And, you know, I did or didn't.
Yeah, you learn from all those experiences. But
Yeah.
Yeah.
Very cool.
well, man, we really appreciate you taking the time to talk
Yeah.
with us, and we're super excited for a new episode of Central Park tomorrow, and then Tacoma FD coming back next month, July 23rd. So
Mm-hmm.
thank you for joining us, and hopefully
Yeah,
we
of
can
course.
talk to you in the future.
Awesome.
All
Thanks,
right, man.
guys.
You have a great day.
Appreciate it.
You too.